Hello everyone. Tonight we walk deep into the heart of a rainforest so thick, even the sunlight has to negotiate to pass through. You're not in Kansas anymore. This is the jungle of Papua New Guinea, and the trees are taller than your apartment building. The air is wet, the birds sound like broken machines, and somewhere in the distance something howls that definitely isn't a dog. Above your head, perched impossibly high, about 140 feet up, there's a home made of sago palm, lashed together with vines. No nails, no cement, just balance, skill, and maybe a little magic. The people who built this, the Korowai tribe, aren't interested in real estate trends or ocean views. They live up here to stay alive. Why? Because in their world, down on the ground means danger. Centuries ago, they believed that evil spirits, called kahua, roamed the forest floor at night, possessing people and eating them from the inside. If you got sick, it wasn't a virus. It was probably your cousin possessed by a kahua trying to digest your soul from across the village. The only way to be safe, get as far away from the ground as possible. Hence the sky houses. Imagine hauling logs and bundles of sago leaves up a ladder made of vines. No cranes, no safety nets. Just raw willpower and some seriously grippy toes. And once the house is built, you climb into it daily, as naturally as you brush your teeth. Honestly, your upstairs neighbor's late-night tap dancing doesn't seem so bad anymore. Now, I know what you're thinking. Okay, but surely they don't actually believe in cannibal spirits, right? Well, it's about that. Historians still debate whether the reports of ritual cannibalism among the Korowai were accurate or exaggerated by outsiders hungry for a headline. But what we do know is that until very recently, like within the last 40 years, the Korowai were almost completely isolated from the outside world. Their customs developed without influence from modern medicine, science, or pop culture. In that context, cannibalism wasn't monstrous. It was justice. If someone in the village became sick or acted strangely, the tribe might hold a meeting. Whispers of kahua possession would swirl. If the consensus was that someone had indeed become a kahua, well, the accused might be killed, and sometimes eaten. Not as an act of hunger, but to stop the spirit from moving on to another host. You probably wouldn't survive this. There's a scene in early anthropological records, one that makes your stomach do a slow flip. A man sits cross-legged, explaining matter-of-factly that they roasted the kakua's brain with sago. No guilt, just peace. Because to them this wasn't murder, it was protection, mercy, and maybe, just maybe, a family meal. Let's soften the mood a little, shall we? You'll be glad to know that many Korowai have since begun integrating with modern life. Some live in stilted homes closer to the ground, others have traded bows for smartphones, but there are still a few deep in the forest who maintain the old ways, building sky houses, hunting with bows, and speaking a language that only a few thousand people in the world understand. And then there's the fashion. Korowai men traditionally wore a penis gourd, known as a koteka. It's exactly what it sounds like. A hollowed-out, dried gourd, worn like a cone over the business. It's tied around the waist and lifted upright with a string around the neck, giving the wearer the posture of someone halfway between a gladiator and a squash. The size and curve? Yeah, those were serious statements. You think your gym shorts make a bold statement? Please. Korowai women traditionally wore skirts made from sago palm fibers. The combination makes for a minimalist wardrobe, perfect for trekking through jungle terrain and totally impractical at a suburban shopping mall. But again, it's all about function. They weren't dressing for likes or views, they were dressing for survival, spirit, and comfort. You can almost smell the forest now, can't you? That damp earth aroma, the buzz of mosquitoes that somehow sound like tiny chainsaws, the sour-sweet tang of fermenting fruit on the ground. The Korowai live surrounded by sound. And when night falls, the jungle becomes a wall of noise, chirps, groans, cackles, and the occasional bone-deep roar. If you've ever tried sleeping with a leaky faucet, imagine that faucet is a jaguar with indigestion. Yet despite the challenges, lack of electricity, no plumbing, very few modern tools, the Korowai thrive. Their children laugh. Their elders pass down stories carved in firelight. They gather sago from palms, hunt with precision, and track animals through paths invisible to outsiders. They live not in fear of the jungle, but with it. That's something we often forget. To them, we're the strange ones. We're the people who sleep in boxes and watch stories about fake monsters, while ignoring the living world outside our glass windows. The Korowai listen to their ancestors. They believe in spirits. They respect the trees and don't build more than they need. You'd never catch one of them binge-watching 37 hours of crime documentaries while ordering sushi through an app named after a jungle. And yet, there's a joke in here. Ready? Imagine you're trying to explain a selfie stick to a Korowai elder. You hold up a glowing rectangle, attach a metal pole, and say, "This is how we document our lives now." He looks at you, then points to his treehouse and says, "I built that with no tools, and I've never dropped it off a cliff trying to get the perfect angle." Touché, tree wizard. Touché. Tonight, the fire crackles a little louder as we travel west, where the winds blow across the red sands of Namibia. You are no longer among towering trees. You are standing in the bone-dried desert with your skin stinging from the wind and your lips already cracked from the heat. There is no water here. None. But strangely, the people around you aren't dusty or dirty. In fact, they smell smoky and sweet, almost like firewood wrapped in honey. You're standing among the Himba tribe, and you're about to learn what a bath looks like when there is no bath to be had. The Himba don't clean themselves with water. Instead, the women sit cross-legged over small bowls of smoldering herbs and resins, allowing the smoke to rise and soak into their skin. These smoke baths are more than hygiene. They're ritual, intimate, sacred. It's like their pores are inhaling the desert spirit. The air is heavy with myrrh and goat butter, and it sticks to you, clings to your clothes, and never quite lets go. Now picture this. The women coat themselves daily in a thick red paste called Untouched, a mixture of butterfat and crushed red ochre stone. It gives their skin a deep terracotta glow, like ancient statues come to life. It protects them from the sun, repels bugs, and acts as a symbol of beauty. You touch your sunscreen bottle, and suddenly it feels clinical, cold. Just remember the crocodile poop sunscreen from Egyptian times. Same vibe, just more stylish. But here is something that might surprise you. Historians still debate whether this red paste evolved purely from practical survival needs, protection from the sun and insects, or if it was always intended as a social signal of status, fertility, and identity. Either way, walking through a Himba village feels like walking through a gallery of walking sculptures, each glowing red, silent, and proud, like warriors painted for a battle that never comes. And about those warriors. Let's talk about fashion, because if you thought we peaked with penis gourds, hold on. Himba men and women alike wear jewelry made from iron, bone, seashells, and leather, sometimes passed down through generations, worn until it becomes part of the skin itself. You'd think it's decorative, but there's more to it. A necklace might tell you a person's marital status. A certain belt might signal puberty. An anklet. Maybe it means her first child is on the way. Your wristwatch, yeah, it just tells you you're late. Here's a funny thing. They've also been known to wear crocodile skin. Not the fancy runway kind, the actual kind. Thick, rough, scaly plates stitched into protective garments. Why? Because it works. A crocodile's hide is nature's Kevlar, and if you can wrestle one off a riverbank, why not wear it? Though, I'd like to see that at your local fashion show. This spring, we're going full predator chic. And let's not forget the hair. Himba hairstyles aren't just for looking good. They tell time. A girl's braids might indicate her age or whether she's ready for marriage. A married woman's hair might be caked in the same red ochre paste, shaped into horns or thick coils, each twist whispering a story passed from mother to daughter. Hair isn't decoration, it's a living diary. Now let's step back for a second. You're sitting on the edge of a Himba village, watching the sunrise over sand dunes that look like rusted waves. A woman beside you smokes a small fire into her skin. A child nearby uses a stick to draw antelopes in the dust. There's no Wi-Fi, no sound of traffic, no smell of gasoline, and you start to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they're not the ones missing out. But we're not here to romanticize. Life here is hard. Water is hauled from miles away. The climate is brutal. Disease and drought are real threats. And yet, the Himba endure. They adapt without sacrificing who they are. In a world obsessed with change, they choose to remember. That's not backward, that's bold. Here's a light-hearted moment for you. Tourists sometimes visit Himba villages, hoping for a cultural experience. They come with phones, sunscreen, and nervous smiles. One tourist tried giving a Himba woman a bar of scented soap. She sniffed it, wrinkled her nose, and said something that translates loosely to, "Why would I want to smell like flowers when I can smell like the fire?" Touché. Again. So what does this teach us? That beauty isn't bleach-white teeth and coconut-scented lotion. That cleanliness can smell like smoke and earth. That fashion doesn't come from Paris. It might come from the crocodile that tried to bite your leg last week. And maybe the strangest part of it all is how normal it feels once you're there. The routines, the rituals, the rhythms. The Himba don't try to impress you. They don't post, they don't tweet. They just are. And that, strangely enough, is what makes them unforgettable. The jungle breathes differently here. It doesn't grow upward like a proud skyscraper. It slouches, tangled, with vines that seem to whisper secrets in a language older than memory. You feel the thick air stick to your neck like warm syrup. You hear the faint hum of insects, somewhere between a buzz and a warning. And beneath all that, you hear chanting. You've entered the world of the Yanomami, a tribe deep within the Amazon rainforest. This is a people with a bond so tight to the spirit world that death itself isn't at the end. It is just an invitation to dinner. I'm not kidding. Here, death doesn't mean burial. It means endo-cannibalism, a funeral practice in which the bones of the deceased are burned, ground into powder, mixed with fermented banana soup, and consumed by the community. Your jaw's probably already halfway to the floor, but hold on. This isn't savage. It's sacred. It's how love stays alive in the Yanomami world. Historians still debate whether this tradition stems from pure spiritual belief or if it had a more practical origin in survival, given the remote environment. But to the Yanomami, it's about keeping the soul safe. They believe the spirit can to rest unless every part of the body has returned to the people who loved it. The act of eating becomes an act of honoring. The grief becomes warmth in the belly. Weird? Maybe, but deeply human. Now picture this. You're handed a gourd bowl. It's warm, sweet, smoky. A woman gently says the name of her brother who passed a year ago. She sips from the bowl like it's coffee on a rainy morning. No tears, just reverence. You start to realize it's not about consumption, it's about continuation. Of course, outsiders often misunderstand this practice. When news of it first reached the Western world, headlines screamed, "Cannibal tribe discovered in Amazon." But that's the thing. If all you see is the act and not the emotion behind it, you miss the point entirely. You can't judge a song just by the volume. The Yanomami world is filled with spirits, not ghosts. Spirits. They're not spooky, they're guides, watchers, and sometimes tricksters. The shaman, often under the influence of yopo powder, a hallucinogenic snuff made from the Anodinanthera plant, will chant and shake and fall into trances to speak with these spirits. You might think it looks like theater, but it's deadly serious. He's negotiating health, luck, even life. And here comes the open-air debate. Historians still aren't sure if the hallucinations seen during yopo rituals are spiritual visions or the result of deep physiological trauma brought on by stress and environment. But if a man believes he just flew into the underworld and brought back a cure, does it matter if it was chemically induced or spiritually summoned? The effect is real, the healing happens. Now, about the noise. The Yanomami villages are usually circular clearings, surrounded by communal houses. But what you notice most isn't the layout, it's the sound. There is no such thing as alone here. Children run barefoot, adults shout over fires, parrots squawk, and somewhere always a drum thumps like a heartbeat. This isn't chaos, it's comfort. Silence is suspicious here. Lighten your mood for a moment. You'd think with all the ritual and chanting and soul-consuming banana soup that things are always solemn. But no. The Yanomami love to laugh. They tease each other constantly. There is even a word for the little fake cry whines kids use to guilt their parents. It translates loosely to, "I am pretending sadness." Sound familiar? And let's be real. Imagine a modern influencer trying to vlog here. "Hey guys, welcome back to my jungle morning routine. First I grind Grandpa's bones into a smoothie, Don't forget to like and follow. Yeah, probably not going viral in the right way. But here's a funny contradiction for you. The Yanomami believe strongly in sharing everything, yet they're known for fierce inter-village warfare. Disputes over hunting grounds, accusations of sorcery, even romantic jealousies can lead to violent clashes. They value peace, but they accept war as a cycle of life. Outsiders don't always get that. Our world is full of laws and systems. Theirs is full of balance. Sometimes that means conflict. And yet, despite generations of fighting disease, deforestation, and the slow creep of globalization, the Yanomami endure. They've faced governments who drew lines through their homes, miners who poisoned their rivers, and missionaries who tried to erase their gods. But still, they chant, they dance, they sip the soup of their ancestors and tell the next generation, remember him, he is part of you now. Let me tell you this, you couldn't survive here, not just because of the snakes, the bugs, the humidity that turns your clothes into soggy napkins. No, you wouldn't survive because the idea of grief tasting sweet would make you freeze, because you'd want to grieve in silence, in private, in denial. The Yanomami grieve by remembering, by sharing, by swallowing the pain and turning it into a lullaby. You can smell it before you even open your eyes, dirt, wind, crushed vines, and that faint metallic scent of adrenaline. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, below, jungle, above, sky, and in front of you. A rickety tower made of branches lashed together with vines and hope. It sways slightly in the breeze, creaking like it knows something you don't. Welcome to Pentecost Island, part of the Vanuatu archipelago, where boys don't become men with a speech or a gift. No, here, they jump. It's called land diving, and yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. So imagine a kid, maybe 11, maybe 12, climbing up 70 or 80 feet barefoot, with nothing but 2 vines tied to his ankles. He stands at the top, arms wide, wind pressing against his chest, and he dives, head first. The vines pull taut at the last second, snapping his body just inches above the dirt. No helmet, no net, just ancient timing, shaky math, and some good old-fashioned courage mixed with terror. You probably wouldn't survive this. Even if the vines hold, the shock alone might send your soul sprinting back up the tower. The men here, though, they do it every year during the yam harvest season. They believe the jump blesses the crops, it brings fertility to the soil and strength to the community. It's not just for show, this is spiritual gravity. Historians still debate whether this practice has always been tied to agriculture, or if it started as a private ritual that evolved into a public spectacle. But the result is the same. A breathtaking, bone-shaking display of devotion that makes bungee jumping look like kindergarten recess. Here's a wild detail you won't forget. Before the jump, the vines are measured against the diver's own height, twisted and tested by elders. There's no ruler, no calculator, just experience, passed down through generations. They say the vines speak to those who know how to listen. But if you mishear, the ground speaks too, louder, even stranger. The ground itself is prepared days in advance. Villagers soften the landing zone by turning the earth, pulling up stones, even chanting over it. The belief is that if the diver's head does touch the ground, he won't be hurt if the land has been blessed. Now, whether that's symbolic or supernatural, well, historians still debate that too. Let's zoom in for a second. Imagine being that boy halfway up the tower. Your knees are shaking, not from fear, but from the wind whipping through the platform. The entire village is watching. There's drumming, cheering. Your mother is crying but not stopping you, because stopping you would mean stopping your passage into manhood. You're expected to fall to rise. And sometimes things go wrong. There have been injuries, broken bones, worse. But the ritual continues, year after year. Because to them, the danger isn't the fall. It's living a life without proving yourself. Now a little joke to keep your spine intact. Imagine trying this at a corporate team-building retreat. Okay, Steve, you said you wanted a promotion? Cool. Climb that tree and swan dive into the mulch pile. Don't worry, Kevin from HR tied the vines. Yeah, no thanks. But back to Pentecost. What's fascinating is how nonchalantly the tribe treats this entire event. There's no dramatic countdown, no drum roll, no 3, 2, 1. The diver just jumps when he's ready. Silence, then flight, then thud. The crowd erupts, not because he lived, but because he honored the land. You'll find no trophies here, just respect. The youngest divers sometimes start from the lower platforms, maybe 30 feet up. It's still terrifying, but manageable. By adulthood, the men are expected to take the full leap. Some even do it with arms crossed, head forward, aiming to brush the soil with their hair, a sign of absolute devotion. If they can kiss the earth and live, the gods are pleased. And in modern times, tourists sometimes gather to watch. Cameras click, guides whisper. But the tribe doesn't jump for show. They jump because it's who they are. Because this tower of sticks is their cathedral, their altar, their stage. The jungle doesn't care about YouTube views, and guess what? The modern world tried to ban it. There were arguments about safety, human rights, child protection. Officials swooped in with clipboards and concern, but the villagers pushed back. They said, "This is not your fear to carry, this is ours." And in the end, the jump stayed. So maybe the strangest habit here isn't the leap. It's our obsession with padding everything. Our love of insurance, of bubble wrap, of helmets for toddlers learning to walk. But the people of Pentecost, they leap into the unknown every year just to say, "I'm still worthy." One last thing before we close tonight. As you drift off, imagine that final moment, the pause before the dive, the breath, the heartbeat, the vines pulling against your ankles, humming ancient songs in the breeze, and then air, just air, the world spinning, your past behind you, your future rushing up to meet you. The waves lap gently on a shore that looks like it was painted by someone who has never seen pollution. The sand is powdered sugar. The breeze smells like coconut milk and wet bark. You hear laughter, light, bright, easy, and when you look up, you're greeted not by fearsome warriors or stone-faced elders, but by playful grins and bare chests. You've just stepped onto an island in ancient Polynesia, where social norms float as easily as canoes over calm seas. And modesty. Well, let's just say modesty wears a very different outfit. Here, among the Polynesian tribes, including the Tahitians, Samoans, and Hawaiians, you'll notice something modern tourists still gawk at today. Bare breasts were nothing special. Women walked freely, gracefully, confidently. The human body wasn't hidden. It wasn't scandalized, it was normal. Beautiful, yes, but never shameful. That's right. Coconut bras, the cheesy tourist gimmick you find in gift shops today, weren't really a thing. Not until Western missionaries showed up with their Victorian anxiety and said, "You know what this tropical paradise needs? Corsets and shame." Historians still debate whether the original coconut coverings were purely ceremonial or symbolic. Some say they were worn only during dances, others believe they were invented later to appease foreign expectations. Either way, it wasn't about modesty, it was about meaning. Now picture this, a traditional dance under a full moon. A woman moves her hips like water following the tide. Her torso gleams under the firelight, adorned only with flower garlands and tattoos inked from volcanic soot. She's not performing for you, she's not seeking approval, she's speaking in a language older than writing. Her body is the sentence, her dance, the message. Meanwhile you, sunburnt, mosquito-bitten, and deeply uncomfortable in your cargo shorts, wonder if it's appropriate to clap. Let's dive a little deeper. In many Polynesian cultures, tattoos weren't just ink, they were biographies. A man's thigh might tell you about his father's wars. A woman's arm might chronicle her rites of passage. The skin was a scroll, and the pain of tattooing was part of the ceremony. Imagine getting your life story carved into your legs with shark teeth and soot. Now that's commitment. You might even find women with tattoos around their mouths or on their fingers, symbols of maturity and connection to the gods. And yes, there were times when a woman might use a piece of carved wood, an early version of a bra, if we must call it that, for ritual dances or fertility rites. But walking around town with coconut shells strapped to your chest, that was more of a Hollywood thing. Now here's where it gets funny. In the 1800s, missionaries started handing out blankets to cover the immodest women. One chief reportedly asked if the blankets had special powers, When told they were simply to cover shame, he laughed and said, "But we are not ashamed." Boom, mic drop. Try arguing with that kind of peace. And yet, slowly, customs changed. Colonial pressure, religion, tourism, it all pushed traditional dress into hiding. But not erasure. In fact, many island communities today are reclaiming their heritage, wearing traditional garments with pride, and challenging the idea that the body must be hidden to be honored. Let me paint a picture. A man sits on a woven mat, legs folded. He wears nothing but a lava, a brightly colored cloth tied at the waist. His chest bears swirling tattoos. He's laughing, passing coconut meat to a guest, explaining that when he was a boy, he thought pants were a punishment. He still doesn't like them much. "They hold the legs too tight," he says, grinning. "How do you run from a pig wearing jeans?" That's your joke for tonight. Now let's touch on the real heart of it all, body norms. In Polynesia, large bodies were often admired. Roundness wasn't shameful. It was a sign of abundance, of good family, of comfort. Skinny meant hungry. Hungry meant weak. You see the reversal here? If your belly jiggled while you danced, you were basically royalty. Historians still debate whether these beauty ideals came from the environment, the food supply, or spiritual philosophy. But what we know for sure is that Polynesians valued joy. They danced, feasted, swam, laughed, and built canoes big enough to sail thousands of miles with only stars for a compass. You think your GPS is impressive? Try navigating open ocean with just your cheek against the wind. So here's the strange habit. They made simplicity look like luxury. They found power in softness, confidence in nudity, dignity in dance, and while the outside world labeled it primitive or exotic, the truth is, it was just peaceful. And maybe the real twist tonight is that you've been taught your whole life that modesty means hiding. But here, modesty meant intent. It meant moving with grace, wearing what made sense, speaking with your eyes, your hands, your hips, covering or uncovering yourself as needed, not because of shame, but because of purpose. Let's take a few careful steps into the savannah now. The sun isn't just hot. It feels intentional, like it's trying to teach you a lesson. There's a dry rattle of grasshoppers somewhere nearby, and the wind carries the scent of smoke, sweat, and something you can't quite place. Like roasted peanuts with wings. You found yourself among the Mofu people of northern Cameroon, where bugs aren't a nuisance. They're a seasoning. And no, I'm not talking about those novelty lollipops with crickets inside. I'm talking about mosquito meatballs. Yes, really. Here's how it works. During the wet season, mosquitoes gather in clouds so thick they look like smoke rising from the water. It's not just annoying, it's an opportunity. The Mofu gather them by dragging large oiled pans or wet cloths through the swarms, collecting them by the thousands. The result? A dense black paste. Add a little spice, some flour or maize, shape into patties, cook it over a fire, and boom, mosquito burgers. You probably wouldn't survive the first bite without gagging, but don't be rude. It's a delicacy. Crunchy, nutty, rich in protein, and apparently not terrible. Okay, still a little terrible. Now, historians still debate whether this practice began purely out of necessity or if it was also a clever spiritual solution, turning a cursed insect into a sacred meal. The Mofu don't see bugs as gross, they see them as part of the system. The mosquitoes feed the frogs feed the people feed the land. It's a closed loop. Elegant if you think about it, and honestly, if you're eating chicken nuggets that come from a lab assembly line, are you really in a position to judge someone else's meatball? Here's a lighter moment. A foreign aid worker once asked a Mofu elder, "Aren't you afraid of disease from eating bugs?" The elder looked him dead in the eye and said, "Only when you visit." Boom. That's some dry savannah humor for you, but there's more to the Mofu than crunchy snacks. They're known for something much more fascinating, their relationship with ants. And not just any ants, red driver ants, the kind that make grown men cry and elephants back away. The Mofu use these ants as natural pest control. Picture this. Your field is being destroyed by termites. What do? Call pest control? Spray chemicals? Not here. A Mofu farmer collects driver ants in a calabash, shakes it gently like a rattle, and then releases the swarm into the infested ground. The ants tear through the termites in minutes, no poison, no pollution, just raw ancient biological warfare. You stand there watching thousands of insects battle beneath your feet, and suddenly you realize you're the only one wearing shoes. The mofu don't just farm, they collaborate with nature. They track insects like you track packages. They interpret animal behavior like data. They don't have a weather app, but they can read the wind, the soil, the rhythm of a bee's flight, and know exactly when the rain will come. Try programming that into your smartwatch. And if you're wondering, yes, the children help gather mosquitoes too. It's almost a game. Whoever collects the most gets first dibs on the meatballs. It's kind of like Pokemon Go, but with less app and more slapping bugs in your face. Historians still debate whether these mosquito meals were invented in response to colonial food shortages or if they predate European contact altogether, but either way it stuck. Because when you live in a place where protein is hard to come by, the buzz in the air starts to sound a lot like opportunity. And don't get it twisted, the mofu are not primitive, they're precise. Their knowledge of entomology, bug science basically, is more advanced than most biology majors. In fact, entomologists from around the world have studied their methods to better understand insect behavior. So what seems weird to you is just wisdom in disguise. Let's take a moment to smile. Imagine bringing a mofu elder to a Western supermarket. He sees rows of packaged chicken, breaded fish sticks, canned beans. He squints at a bag of kale chips and asks, "Is this food or punishment?" Then he pulls out a jar of peanut butter and says, "Ah, smashed bugs. You see? Not so different after all." But as the modern world inches closer, some of these practices are fading. Younger generations, especially those going to school in cities, are trading bug burgers for store-bought rice. They're learning English, watching TikToks, buying shoes. And that's not wrong, it's change, but it's also a quiet goodbye to an ancient flavor. Still, deep in the villages, when the rains come and the air swarms again, the old ways return. Fires are lit, cloths are dragged, meatballs are made. And if you close your eyes and breathe in the smoke, you can almost smell the crunch. The trees here don't reach for the sky. They crouch, twisted by cold winds and centuries of stories. The earth is hard, scattered with rocks, and the wind smells like smoke and salt and something almost metallic. You're far from the jungle now. This is the Arctic tundra, and you're stepping gently into the world of the Chukchi people of northeastern Siberia. And what's the strangest habit up here? Well, it might just be hospitality that comes with a wife. Let me explain. In traditional Chukchi culture, there was once a custom called wife lending, in which a man might offer his wife to a traveling guest for the night, not as a transactional or degrading act, but as a profound gesture of trust, honor, and welcome. To share your food, your fire, your roof, and your family. That was the peak of generosity. Historians still debate whether this custom was about forming social alliances, appeasing spirits, or simply a reflection of their brutally harsh environment, where survival depended entirely on cooperation and mutual respect. Whatever the reason, it wasn't about desire, it was about duty. Now relax. This practice has all but disappeared in modern times, but understanding it means understanding how serious hospitality was in a place where one misstep could freeze you solid before sunrise. The cold out here doesn't joke. You share what you have or you risk someone dying. Period. And speaking of sharing, let's talk about reindeer. To the Chukchi, reindeer are not just livestock. They are transportation, clothing, food, tools, and even currency. A man's wealth is measured in antlers. They don't just raise reindeer, they move with them, living in cone-shaped tents called yarangas, which look like yurts made of stitched animal hides and snow-thick blankets. It's mobile housing, long before tiny homes were trendy. Reindeer herding isn't a weekend hobby. It's a full-body, multi-generational dance. Families migrate hundreds of miles every year, through temperatures that make your eyelashes freeze together. And yet, they do it smiling, wrapped in coats sewn from reindeer skins, boots lined with fur and gloves that actually work. Here's a detail you'll love. The Chukchi are known to talk to their reindeer. Not just commands, but conversations. They name them, sing to them. Some say a reindeer can sense its owner's mood just by the tone of voice. Try getting that kind of loyalty from your car. Now for a little fun, there's an old Chukchi joke. When you lend your reindeer, make sure it doesn't come back smarter than you. It loses a bit in translation, but the idea is, don't underestimate those hooves. They've walked more than you have. And while the reindeer are central, the shamans still hold the key to the soul. Dressed in fur robes, covered in antlers, shells, and carved bones, they communicate with the spirit world. Illness, in Chukchi belief, isn't just bacteria, it's imbalance. A shaman will drum for hours, chanting in a trance, until the spirit that caused the problem is either soothed or scared away. And here comes our now familiar refrain. Historians still debate whether these trances were medical, magical, or somewhere in between. Some say it was early psychotherapy, others believe it was chemical, induced by herbs, fasting, or isolation. But when someone gets better after a ritual, well, sometimes results matter more than methods. Let's zoom into the daily life for a moment. It's morning. The snow outside crunches like broken glass. Inside the yaranga, it's dim, smoky, warm. A mother stirs frozen fish into a bubbling broth, her daughter braiding fur strips for mittens. A grandfather carves a sled runner from driftwood. No one rushes, no one scrolls. The world moves slow here, because it has to. And the kids? Let me tell you, Chukchi children are tough. They play outside in 40 degrees like it's recess in spring. They learn to harness reindeer before they lose their baby teeth. They grow up listening to stories about bird spirits, talking mountains, and shadow wolves that stalk the snow. These tales aren't bedtime fluff, they're maps, teaching how to survive and respect the land. Oh, and you will love this twist. The Chukchi language has no direct word for war. Conflict isn't glorified. Disputes are usually settled through rituals, stories, or sometimes endurance contests. In one old tradition, two men would stare at each other in silence until someone blinked. That's it. The first to crack had to apologize. You thought your family arguments were awkward. But here's the quiet beauty in all of this, the strange habit of offering everything, not just what's easy. Sharing your food, your heat, your home, your family. Not because it's polite, but because it's how life continues. That's what makes the Chukchi custom so unusual, so moving, and so misunderstood. Because let's be honest, in the modern world, we barely share the elevator, let alone our fire. But in the tundra, where the wind can kill and the silence can crush, generosity isn't optional, it's survival. The jungle here doesn't whisper, it hums. The leaves shimmer like wet leather, the birds sound like broken flutes, and the air is so thick you could slice it with a spoon. You don't walk through this forest, you squish. And just when you're sure you're lost, you see it, a clearing with strange scaffolding, rising from the ground like skeletal teepees. People surround them, laughing, dancing, and climbing. And welcome to the lives of the Korowai people of Papua, Indonesia, where home isn't on the ground. It's 80 feet up in the trees. Yep, tree houses, but not the kind you built as a kid with your uncle's leftover plywood and a couple of rusty nails. No, these are full-on homes, balanced on stilts the height of a 4-story building, made entirely from branches, bark, and palm fronds. Families eat, sleep, and live high above the jungle floor. Why? To escape floods, insects, evil spirits, and sometimes each other. You probably wouldn't survive a single night here, not because the tree might fall, but because your nerves would, the moment a storm rolled in. The Korowai build their houses that high because it keeps them safe. The higher you are, the fewer mosquitoes, snakes, or wild pigs come knocking. But also, traditionally, it was a defense tactic against rival clans. The higher the house, the harder it is to attack. Imagine a fight scene where your enemies need a ladder just to knock on your door. Genius. Now, here comes the juicy bit. The Korowai were once believed to be cannibals. That's right. For years, Western journalists and explorers swore up and down that the Korowai ate human flesh, but historians still debate whether those reports were accurate, exaggerated, or staged for outsiders. Some researchers believe that if it happened at all, it was rare and ritualistic. Not a snack, but a sentence. Others suggest the tribes leaned into the rumor to keep intruders away. If someone thinks you eat people, they probably won't visit twice. And honestly, that's better than a no trespassing sign, but regardless of what's true or myth, The Korowai worldview is spirit-soaked. They believe in beings called kakwa, malevolent witch spirits that take the form of ordinary people, but secretly cause sickness and death. If someone dies unexpectedly, the family often suspects a kakwa, and the accused might face deadly consequences. It's not paranoia. It's survival wrapped in story. Let's shift gears for a moment. You're inside a Korowai treehouse now. The floor is made of thin, springy slats. There's no furniture, just woven mats, fire pits, and drying bananas hanging from the beams. A child scurries past you with a frog in her hand. A woman sharpens a sago scraper, a tool for preparing their main food source, the sago palm. Sago is like jungle mashed potatoes. They grate the pulp, wash it, then cook it into a gluey dough. It's bland, really bland, but it fills the belly and sticks to your ribs like edible wallpaper paste. Add some roasted spider or beetle larvae. That's dinner. And speaking of spiders, here's a light moment. The Korowai love tarantulas, not as pets, as snacks, plucked from tree trunks, roasted over fire until the legs curl, and crunched like jungle popcorn. One elder was once asked if he'd try French fries. He said, "Why eat roots when the spiders are fat this season?" Touché, sir. Touché. Now construction. Let us not skip over how insane it is that these houses are built with zero power tools. Just stone blades, hand-woven rope, and teamwork. It takes about a week to build a proper treehouse, and when it's done, it sways in the wind like a ship at sea. But here's the kicker. They don't stay forever. After a few years, they abandon it and build another. Why? Historians aren't totally sure. Some say it's because of spiritual reasons, bad dreams, illness, or the feeling that a kakwa might be nearby. Others think it's just easier than maintenance. Either way, moving house here means literally building a new house in a tree, and you thought your last apartment lease was stressful. And yes, things are changing. Some Korowai are moving into more settled villages, wearing Western clothes, going to school. Others stay in the trees, holding on to the old ways. There's tension between generations, between practicality and tradition. But the forest doesn't judge. It just keeps humming. Still, every so often, a visitor shows up with a camera, hoping to capture the last Stone Age tribe. And sure, the Korowai oblige. They pose, they cook. Sometimes they even reenact rituals no longer practiced. Because let's be honest, tourism brings cash. It's complicated, real and not real at once. So what's the strange habit? It's not the tree houses, or the sago goo, or the roasted spiders. It's the balance between myth and muscle, danger and design, performance and belief. To the Korowai, life is a story you live up there, closer to the sky than the dirt. And if the rest of us don't get it, that's fine, we're still down here looking up. The desert doesn't make noise, not at first. It waits. The silence stretches so long it hums, and the heat doesn't just press against your skin. It curls inside your lungs. Out here in the Danakil Depression of Ethiopia, the land looks like another planet. Bubbling acid pools, salt flats that shimmer like glass, volcanoes that breathe smoke like dragons, and walking across this surreal, blistering terrain, a group of men wrapped in bright cloth, leading long lines of camels like ghosts through a furnace. These are the Afar people, one of the toughest, most heat-resistant tribes on Earth. And what's strange about them? Let's start with this. They've carved an entire culture out of salt, literally. For generations, the Afar have harvested salt slabs, called amole, from the Earth's crust. With simple hand tools and incredible precision, they chisel massive blocks from the desert floor, dry them in the sun, and load them onto camel caravans. The journey, hundreds of miles on foot, across scorching terrain where the temperature can easily hit 50 degrees C, 122 degrees C. And they do it barefoot. You probably wouldn't last 2 hours out here, let alone 2 weeks. Now here is a fun moment. Tourists who've tried walking with the Afar often come with fancy gear, hiking boots, water packs, SPF 9000 sunscreen. Meanwhile, an Afar elder wearing nothing but a wrap, a plastic bottle, and a rusty pickaxe will chuckle and say, "You look heavy." And he's right. You are. Not just with gear, but with comfort. The Afar travel light because out here, lightness is life. Historians still debate whether the salt trade started with internal necessity or long-distance exchange, but we know this. For centuries, salt wasn't just seasoning. It was currency. Afar traders would travel to cities and markets with their camel trains, trading salt for everything from cloth to coffee. And when they got back home, they'd do it all again. No rest, just rhythm. But salt isn't the only strange habit. Let's talk about teeth. In Afar tradition, there's a custom of dental shaping. Young men, sometimes women too, will have their teeth filed into sharp points, giving them the appearance of fanged smiles. It's not a punishment or a survival tactic. It's considered beautiful, elegant, powerful. In some cases, it's said to mimic the crocodile, respected for its strength and feared for its bite. Imagine a teenager grinning at you, his smile lined with natural daggers. It's unsettling and impressive. And yes, it hurts. It's done with blades, rocks, or even hot metal files. No numbing cream, just grit. Historians still debate whether the practice originated as an aesthetic choice or as a rite of passage, meant to symbolize pain, endurance, and personal transformation. But to the Afar, it's a way of announcing adulthood. I have suffered, therefore I am. And don't worry, it's not all teeth and salt and fire. The Afar are fiercely poetic. Their language is full of metaphor. A child who runs fast is chased by the wind. A woman who sings well is said to make the stars jealous. Their oral traditions span hundreds of years, epic poems, love songs, war chants, all passed down by memory, never written. Let's pause for a joke. An Afar elder once told a visiting journalist, "Our stories are like camels. They never forget where the water is." The journalist asked, "Do you mean they're long?" The elder replied, "No, I mean you'll die without them." That's Afar humor, dry as the air and twice as sharp. One more strange thing, scarification. Among some Afar groups, especially in older generations, small patterned scars were made on the skin using knives or thorns. These weren't random. They told stories. A mark near the eye might signal a family loss. A pattern along the arms might honor a father's bravery. Today, fewer youths follow the custom, but it remains a map etched in skin for those who carry it. And when someone dies, there is no stone grave, no shrine. The Afar bury their dead quickly, often in a shallow grave marked with a simple pile of stones. But the mourning? It can last for weeks. Women wail, men sit in silence, and poems are sung about the soul's journey across the salt. They say the desert will remember you if your family sings loud enough. You might wonder, how do people thrive in such an unforgiving place? Because the Afar don't see it as unforgiving. They see it as home. The heat is an old friend. The salt is an inheritance. The volcanoes are not threats. They're landlords, and you must live respectfully beneath their breath. Even modern pressure hasn't broken them. Governments try to regulate the salt trade. Developers want the land for tourism. But the Afar? They keep walking. They keep trading. They keep teaching their children how to navigate by stars, how to find water by the color of sand, how to listen when the earth starts rumbling. So maybe the strange habit isn't the salt or the teeth or even the barefoot desert trekking. Maybe it is something rarer, the habit of belonging so deeply to your land that no one, not time, not governments, not outsiders, can pull you from it. The air smells like milk and ash, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes for days. Around you the earth stretches in flat waves of grass, dotted by cattle that seem more sacred than mere animals. You're in the highlands of East Africa, stepping into the world of the Maasai people, where every movement, every color, every scar has meaning. Here your wealth isn't measured in coins, it's measured in cows. The Maasai have a saying, "A man without cattle is like a bird without wings." Cows are everything. Currency, food, status, spiritual symbol. They're not just part of life, they are life. And here's the strange bit. Maasai men drink cow blood, not just in ceremonies but as a source of nutrition and strength. Especially after a birth, a circumcision or an illness, warm blood mixed with milk is believed to restore health and life force. It's tapped directly from the cow's neck using a tiny bow and arrow tool, drawn out without killing the animal. The wound is quickly sealed with ash, and the cow walks away, unbothered, possibly a bit annoyed. You probably wouldn't survive the first sip without grimacing, But to the Maasai, it's not grotesque, it's sacred. Historians still debate whether this practice came from nutritional necessity during drought seasons, or if it's tied more deeply to beliefs about vitality and connection to the herd. Either way, it's not done casually. Blood is precious, respected, and never wasted. Now picture this. A young Maasai warrior, or Moran, painted in red ochre, beads around his neck, carrying a spear taller than you. He's just returned from solo time in the wild, his rite of passage into manhood. And no, it's not a weekend retreat. It's a period of isolation, learning survival, reflection, and sometimes in the past, lion hunting. That's right, lion hunting. Once, a young warrior was expected to prove his courage by killing a lion with nothing but a spear. Today, conservation laws have curbed this tradition, and the Maasai have adapted. Now, bravery is shown through protection, not conquest. But in old songs, the lion is still remembered as the test of a true Moran. Let's pause for a quick joke. A Maasai elder once said, "You can tell who failed the lion hunt. He's the one who talks the most at the fire." Translation, silence means pride. Talking too much? You probably ran. And it's not just the men who carry tradition. Maasai women, wrapped in layers of beads and cloth so vivid they almost hum with color, are keepers of music, birth, and community. They sing lullabies that echo across the savannah. They build the houses, mud and stick enkaji, by hand. They raise the children, teach the stories, tend the fires. Now, here's a unique detail: Maasai jumping dances. You've seen them, probably on documentaries. Warriors leap straight into the air, higher and higher, arms stiff at their sides, surrounded by rhythmic chanting. This isn't random athleticism. It's a courtship ritual. The higher you jump, the more graceful you seem, the more likely you are to attract admiration from the young women watching. No pressure. Still, one elder joked that in his day, we jumped for pride, now they jump for Instagram. Touché. There's more. The ear stretching. Among both men and women, traditional Maasai often stretch their earlobes using stones, thorns, or wood. The longer the lobe, the more beautiful or respected the person may be. It's not a requirement, but it's a cultural fingerprint, a reminder that beauty in every corner of the world wears different shoes. But the biggest shift? Modernity. Cell phones now beep in some villages. Maasai youth go to school, watch football, speak Swahili and English alongside Ma. Some leave the pastoral life behind entirely, becoming teachers, doctors, or YouTubers. And yet, the culture persists. Ceremonies continue. Cattle are still counted. The red shuka, the traditional cloth, is still worn with pride. Historians still debate how long these customs will survive in a changing world, but for now they do. And not as museum pieces, but as living, breathing traditions. And maybe that's the most fascinating habit of all. The ability to balance two worlds. To text your cousin on a smartphone in one hand and milk a cow with the other. To go to university and still wear your red robe when you return home. To walk between ancient ritual and modern rhythm and feel no contradiction. So next time you see someone in brightly patterned cloth, beads clinking, standing tall in a field of cows, don't stare. Stand still and listen, because if you're lucky, you might just hear a song carried by wind, older than the map you were taught, sung by people who still know exactly who they are. The fire crackles low, casting long shadows across the red sand. Behind you, the stars look close enough to catch with a net, billions of them stretching across the sky like spilled salt. There's no electricity here, no cars, just the sound of laughter, quiet footsteps, and the soft clap of hands around a story being told. You're deep in southern Africa, in the lands of the Sand People, often called the Bushmen, perhaps the oldest surviving culture on Earth. And what's the strange habit here? They don't just tell stories, they dance them. The San believe the world is full of energy, inside the rocks, the wind, even the firewood crackling beside you. But that energy doesn't move unless you move with it. So they dance, not for performance, not for entertainment, but for healing. These are known as trance dances, and they are among the most ancient spiritual rituals still practiced today. When someone is ill or troubled or the community feels off balance, The San gather around a central fire. The women sit in a tight circle, clapping and chanting hypnotic rhythms. The men dance in slow, deliberate steps around the flames, stamping, leaning, whispering to the ancestors. One or more dancers will enter a trance state, often after hours of dancing in the dry heat. Their bodies shake, they fall, they groan. It might look frightening to an outsider, but to the San, this is the moment where healing happens. The dancer is believed to leave their body, traveling into the spirit realm, battling sickness, pulling it out and casting it into the fire. It's not just ritual, it's medicine. Historians still debate whether these trance states are induced solely by physical exhaustion, rhythmic repetition, or perhaps by entering a deep meditative state passed down through generations. Some have even compared it to early neurological therapy. But for the San, there's no need to name it. It works. That's enough. And here's the part that gets you. When the trance dancer awakens, he doesn't boast, he doesn't preach. He simply returns to the circle, sits quietly and listens. Because in San belief, the energy isn't his. He just borrowed it for a while. Now let's have a smile. San humor is sharp and dry, kind of like the land. One San woman was once asked by a researcher, "How do you survive without shoes?" She smiled and replied, "We don't step on thorns. You do." Touché. Desert logic. The San don't build villages. They move seasonally, tracking game, gathering berries, roots and tubers. Their knowledge of the land is so deep, it seems like they don't find food. They remember it. A tracker can follow a springbok's hoofprints for days, through shifting sand, knowing from a broken twig which way it turned, how fast it was moving, and if it was wounded. They don't own land or wealth or titles. What you gather, you share. What you hunt, you divide. Even arrows are marked to show which hunter gets the credit, because a good shot feeds a group, not a man. And speaking of arrows, let's talk about poison. The San are master hunters, and their arrows are tiny, smaller than a school ruler. But don't be fooled. The real punch is in the poison. They extract it from the larvae of a specific beetle hidden underground. One tiny smear of this toxin can kill a giraffe in hours. The hunter tracks the animal patiently, offering a quiet apology before the kill. Because killing without reverence, that's not the San way, historians still debate whether these poisons were discovered through experimentation, spiritual vision, or imitation of animal behavior. But however they were learned, the precision is astonishing. One beetle, one drop, one meal. And through all of this, there is storytelling. At night, under the same stars you're seeing now, the San tell tales about how the moon got its scars, how the mantis created the first flame, how a foolish hunter tried to chase the sun and had to be rescued by a jackal. The stories are funny, wise, full of animals who speak in riddles and people who never quite get it right. The stories teach lessons, but gently. Like, don't be too proud. Even the lion trips over his tail. Or, listen to the wind. It forgets nothing. But perhaps the strangest habit of all is their silence. San people don't talk loudly, they don't interrupt. When someone is speaking, the others wait, sometimes minutes for them to finish. There are long pauses, long silences. In San culture, not speaking is a way of speaking. It's space, it's respect. It's understanding that not all truths arrive quickly. And maybe we've forgotten that. You sitting there with 1,000 tabs open, phone buzzing, caffeine pumping through your blood, you crave that silence more than you know. The San live it, every day, not as monks, not as rebels, just as themselves. So tonight, as the fire burns low and the stars lean in closer than ever before, remember this: some of the world's strangest habits are simply the oldest truths, still walking barefoot through the dust. You can hear it before you see it, drumming, not loud, not violent, just steady, like the heartbeat of a mountain. Then, laughter, high-pitched, melodic, drifting through misty rainforest air. There's the scent of roasted yam, sweat, and something earthy, like wet wood and fermented leaves. You're in Papua New Guinea, deep in the highlands, where the land folds in on itself and time moves like honey. Here you meet the Chimbu people, sometimes called the Simbu, and you realize quickly this tribe has made an art form of being terrifying and fabulous at the same time. Let's start with the skeleton dances. During certain festivals, the Chimbu paint their entire bodies in white and black clay, creating an eerie skeletal illusion. When they emerge from the jungle, painted ribs, hollow eye sockets, elongated limbs, you don't think, what a lovely cultural display. No, you think, this is it. The jungle got me. I'm about to be haunted. But that's the point. It's part theatre, part spiritual armour. Historians still debate whether the skeleton body paint was originally intended to scare away enemy tribes or evil spirits. Today it's become part of ceremonial dance, a celebration of ancestry, identity, and the thin veil between the living and the dead. It's a way of saying, we remember who we are, and we wear it on our skin. The first time a tourist stumbled upon this tradition, they reportedly ran screaming back into the jungle, convinced they'd met ghosts. The Chimbu, they laughed for hours. To them it was just Saturday. And the thing is, this isn't just about pageantry. It's about intimidation in a place where wars weren't fought with guns, but with masks, movements, and messaging. Looking like death itself? Pretty solid psychological warfare. But let's zoom in for a moment, past the bones, into the daily rhythm of Chimbu life. The land here is steep, gardens are carved into mountainsides, everything is done on foot. You don't go to the store. You walk 2 hours through muddy slopes to trade a bundle of sweet potatoes for cooking oil. Your legs? Stronger than a gym trainer's. Your calves? Basically carved from obsidian. Food isn't just survival, it's structure. Taro, yam, cassava, bananas, all grown by hand. Pigs are sacred. They're raised for marriage, apologies, and status, not dinner, unless it's a big event. Here is a detail you will love. When it is time for a wedding or major gathering, the community throws a mocha, a traditional feast where rival clans try to outgift each other, not outfight, not outshout, outgift. You bring pigs, yams, shell money, maybe even a truck or a generator if you're feeling fancy. The goal? Humiliate your rival with generosity. You give so much that they can't repay you for years. And when they finally do, they give back even more. It's like a flex-off, but with kindness. That's how peace is maintained. Competitive generosity. We could all learn something from that. Now here's a light moment. A Chimbu elder was once asked, "How do you know if someone is rich?" He said, "When they smile while giving away their last pig." That's some high-level emotional intelligence right there. But with all this intensity, don't think the Chimbu don't laugh. They do, all the time. Their jokes are sharp, fast, and often make fun of themselves. One dancer, freshly painted in full skeleton attire, once told a tourist, "You're scared. I had to walk up the mountain in this paint with no shoes. I'm the real ghost." And you can't talk about strange habits without mentioning spirit houses. These are hidden places in the forest, built of wood and leaves, where young boys are sometimes taken for initiation rites. What happens there is not entirely clear. Outsiders aren't allowed. Even other community members may not know the full details. But what we do know is this. Boys enter, and after several days or weeks they return as men with new names, new roles, and the knowledge of how to be Chimbu. Historians still debate whether these rites originated as educational retreats or deeply symbolic spiritual transformations. Either way, they're a powerful line drawn in the soil between childhood and adulthood. Cross it, and you carry the weight of your clan. But not everything stays the same. The skeleton dancers now sometimes perform for tourists. Cell phones are appearing, radios hum in the background. Modern clothing mixes with traditional paint. And still, the heart of it remains. Because what might seem strange to you, painting yourself like a skeleton to honor the dead, giving away your best food to beat your enemies, guarding secret rituals in the jungle, is simply how the Chimbu keep their world spinning. And maybe, just maybe, if you stripped away the skyscrapers and schedules and suitcases, you'd find yourself needing that too. A mask to remind you who you are. A dance that says, "I'm still here." A gift given so generously it burns in your hands. It starts with smoke. Thin trails curling through the treetops, carrying the smell of roasted root vegetables, burnt feathers, and earth that's been walked for thousands of years. The air is cooler here, not because of temperature, but because of how deep the forest is. You're in the Amazon basin, and surrounding you are the sounds of birds, frogs, monkeys, and drums. Always drums. Welcome to the world of the Yanomami people, one of the most isolated and studied indigenous tribes in the world. And the strange habit, they eat their ancestors. Yes, let me explain. When someone in the community dies, the Yanomami don't bury the body and walk away. No, that would be incomplete, even disrespectful. Instead, the body is burned, the bones are crushed into fine ash, and then mixed into banana soup or mashed plantain. The entire family consumes it, slowly, silently. This is called endo-cannibalism, not born of violence or war, but of grief and reverence. You don't eat to forget, you eat to remember, to keep the spirit close. The idea is simple. As long as a piece of your loved one lives inside of you, they are never truly gone. You probably wouldn't survive that first bite, not physically but emotionally. The thought of it is unsettling, but here it's healing. Historians still debate whether the custom began as a spiritual obligation or as a practical way to protect the soul from wandering. Some argue it's symbolic, others claim it's literal, but either way, to the Yanomami, love doesn't end at death. It transforms, and that's just the beginning. The Yanomami live in shabonos, large communal houses shaped like massive donuts made from leaves, vines, and wood. Up to 100 people live together in a single structure, with a fire in the center and open space above for smoke to drift out and stars to peek in. There's no privacy. Everything is shared: meals, stories, songs, silence. And with that closeness comes a system of balance. Disputes are solved in peculiar but precise ways. One tradition: the chest-pounding duel. Two men stand across from each other and take turns hitting one another square in the chest with closed fists. No blocking, no flinching. Just hit, breathe, and hit again until one concedes or peace is reached. Imagine doing that at work instead of sending a passive-aggressive email. Here's a joke. One Yanomami boy, watching two elders chest thump over a stolen gourd, whispered, "They'll forget what they were fighting about before they bruise." That's wisdom in a punch, but the real heart of the Yanomami world is the shaman. Covered in red paint, bones around his neck, eyes half closed, the shaman enters trance by inhaling yopo, a hallucinogenic powder made from tree bark and seeds. The effects are strong. Visions follow. The shaman sings to Zapiripe, spirit beings who appear as glittering animals, ancestors, and elemental forces. These spirits help him heal the sick, see the future, and even speak with the dead. Yes, it's mystical. Yes, it's strange. And yet, historians still debate whether the visions induced by yopo are spiritual insight, advanced placebo effects, or a cultural manifestation of psychedelic consciousness. But the healing that follows is often real. When a child burns with fever, it is the shaman, not the medicine man from outside, who is called upon first. And there's structure here too. Boys aren't just born into manhood. They must pass through stages of learning, hunting, enduring, surviving. Girls too learn the medicines, the meanings of dream symbols, how to predict storms by watching bird flight. Marriage? Negotiated, complex. Families form alliances. But love exists too. There is an old story about a young Yanomami girl who refused every suitor until one boy built her a hammock from vines he braided himself. She married him and kept the hammock until her last breath. When she died, they burned it with her bones. She should rest where she first felt loved, they said. Beautiful, isn't it? But this world isn't untouched anymore. Outsiders have arrived: loggers, miners, missionaries, filmmakers. Diseases came with them. So did guns. The forest is shrinking. Some Yanomami now live close to towns, wear Western clothes, go to schools. Others fight to keep the old ways alive. The drumbeat continues, but sometimes it's drowned out by chainsaws. Still, what survives? Survives strong. The habit of honoring the dead through ashes, of healing with spirit songs, of solving disputes not with war but with rhythm and ritual. It's strange, maybe, but to the Yanomami it's normal, sacred, necessary, because where the jungle eats everything, light, sound, time, only what's remembered remains. The wind moves slow here, like it's got nowhere to be. You can hear the soft crunch of sand beneath bare feet. the quiet chime of beadwork brushing against skin, and laughter that's both proud and private. The Kalahari Desert rolls out like an ancient blanket, dry and vast, but it's not empty, not even close. You are now with the Himba people of northern Namibia, one of the most visually striking and deeply traditional groups left in Africa. And their strange habit? They don't bathe, at least not with water. Instead, they cleanse their bodies through smoke. Let's break that down. The Himba live in a region where water is scarce, and what little they have is often reserved for drinking or livestock. So, women especially have perfected a method of daily smoke cleansing, using aromatic herbs and burning embers. They sit in a small enclosure, cover themselves with cloth, and let the smoke rise around them. They fan it under their armpits, between their legs, across their entire bodies, removing bacteria, scent, and sweat without a single drop of water. And it works. They smell earthy, not dirty, smoky, not sour. Think incense, not funk. You probably wouldn't survive more than a week here before you reached for a bottle of shampoo or deodorant. But the Himba? They glow, literally, because of another habit, ogiza. It's a sacred paste made from butterfat and red ochre powder, applied to the skin and hair daily. It protects against sunburn, repels insects, and is considered a mark of beauty and identity. Himba women apply it with care, rubbing it across their bodies, braiding it into their hair, and coating their jewelry and clothing. The result? A deep red sheen, like sun-warmed clay. Not paint, not makeup. Identity. Historians still debate whether this tradition began as purely cosmetic or out of necessity in the harsh climate. Some believe it also holds spiritual meaning, the red color symbolizing life and the earth. Whatever the origin, it's now an unbreakable part of who they are. And the hairstyles. That's another language entirely. Each Himba hairstyle tells a story of age, gender, social status, even whether a woman has children or is ready to marry. Long, sculpted locks covered in ogiza signal beauty and strength. Young girls wear 2 thick braids over their face. Men tie their hair in a single plait if they're unmarried, or hide it entirely under a turban if they're wed. You don't choose your hair here, it chooses you, based on your place in the timeline of Himba life. Now here's a funny moment. A Himba boy seeing a tourist with messy beach hair once asked, "Did your tribe run out of butter?" The tourist laughed, but the question was serious. Because here grooming is culture, and that goes for gender roles too. Himba society is deeply traditional. Women manage the home, the children, the goats, the cooking. Men tend the cattle, make decisions, perform rituals. And yet, it's the women who carry the culture. They pass on the songs, the rituals, the craft of otjis, the knowledge of herbs. They build the homes, yes, literally build them, using a mix of clay, dung, and wood. They raise the future while holding on to the past. And then there's the fire. At the center of every Himba village is a holy fire, kept burning continuously. It connects the living to the ancestors. It's never allowed to die. Every important decision, every ceremony, every marriage or birth, it's all done in sight of the flame. The head of the family acts as the spiritual link, offering prayers and guidance through the smoke. Even when a Himba travels far, they may return home just to sit by the fire and whisper into it. Historians still debate whether the holy fire predates organized religion in the region, or if it evolved from contact with other cultures. Either way it burns on, steady, sacred, and never alone. Marriage here is both a personal and communal affair. Families arrange unions, sometimes from childhood, and negotiate with bride wealth, typically in cattle. But love is not excluded. Many Himba couples speak of deep companionship. And despite the formal structure, there's an openness. Relationships can be fluid, even polyamorous, guided more by community harmony than strict rules. Let's pause for another light laugh. A Himba elder once said, "Marriage is like a cow, you don't just milk it once." Interpret that however you like. But amid all this tradition, modernity knocks. Cell phones buzz, roads inch closer. Tourists arrive with cameras and questions. Some Himba adopt jeans and t-shirts, return to school, move to the city, but many return again, to the ochre, the smoke, the fire. Because their habits, as strange as they seem, are more than survival. They are declarations, We are still here, still red, still rooted. The jungle here doesn't whisper. It growls, softly, constantly, like it's dreaming while awake. The rain has a rhythm of its own, trickling through layers of leaves, dripping into small pools beside your feet. You're in the dense forests of North Sentinel Island, one of the last places on Earth where the outside world simply isn't allowed in. This is where the Sentinelese live. And their strangest habit? They've never joined us, never. The Sentinelese are among the last truly uncontacted peoples in the world. For thousands of years they've lived in total isolation, refusing contact, trade, conversation, even basic gestures with the outside world. Planes fly overhead. Boats sometimes drift too close, but the response is always the same: arrows, spears, and silence. You probably wouldn't survive 10 minutes on the island. Even the Indian government, who technically claims jurisdiction, has made it illegal to approach within 5 kilometers. That's not just to protect the Sentinelese, it's also to protect you, because their immune systems, untouched by outside disease, are dangerously vulnerable. A single handshake could devastate their entire population. But that doesn't mean they're primitive. No, not even close. The Sentinelese are highly adapted to their island. They build canoes that skim the shallow reefs. They hunt wild pigs, turtles, and fish with precision. They use fire, maintaining it carefully, probably through embers kept burning continuously. Their homes are small, functional, and hidden in thick vegetation. They wear little clothing, but adorn themselves with belts, headbands, and ornaments made from leaves and bark. Simple, beautiful, deliberate. And here's a detail most people miss. They're not wild. They're defending their way of life. Historians still debate whether their ancestors came during early human migrations out of Africa, or whether they broke off from larger Andamanese tribes thousands of years ago. Either way, they've made one thing very clear: we are not welcome. There's a story, strange and haunting. In 2006, 2 fishermen accidentally drifted into their waters while sleeping. They were killed. A helicopter sent to retrieve the bodies was met with a hail of arrows. The authorities gave up. They understood, the line was drawn. But before that, there were brief encounters. In the late 20th century, Indian anthropologists attempted friendly contact, bringing gifts of coconuts, bananas, and metal tools. Sometimes the Sentinelese would take them. Other times they'd fire warning shots. Always they kept their distance. No names exchanged, no words understood. One researcher once described a fleeting moment when a young Sentinelese child stepped forward, took a coconut and smiled. That smile lasted 2 seconds. Then the spears came back up. That's the rhythm here: curiosity, caution, control. And here's a light moment, if you can call it that. On one occasion, a Sentinelese man allegedly turned his back on the gift-givers, bent over, and showed his butt as a gesture of defiance. Universal language, right? The tribe's population is estimated to be around 50 to 150 people, but no one knows for sure. They don't allow census takers, they don't post selfies, and they certainly don't want us to define them. Maybe that's their greatest habit of all, the habit of saying no. No to satellites, no to timelines, no to global culture, Wi-Fi, TikTok, Coca-Cola, or campaign season. They exist on their own terms. There's something deeply human about that. Not the violence, not the isolation, but the insistence on sovereignty, the idea that you don't have to be known to be valid. You don't have to be studied to be whole. We're so used to celebrating exposure. The more seen you are, the more real you are. But the Sentinelese don't play that game. They're not lost. They're not backward. They're simply uninterested in us. And let's be honest, we could probably use a little of that energy. Saying no, choosing solitude, respecting our own boundaries. So when you think of strange tribal habits, don't just think of body paint, or blood rituals, or dances around fire. Think of this: a group of people alive today who live by one rule: leave us alone. And in doing so, they've done something extraordinary. They've kept a flame alive that the rest of us may have smothered. The right to define your world, not just live in someone else's. So let's end where we began. Remember the tribes who healed with dance, who painted with ash, who whispered to the dead through smoke, who measured wealth in yams, in pigs, in laughter. They're not strange because they're different, They're strange because they remind us of what we've forgotten. So if this little walk through the wild parts of human nature stirred something in you, I'd be honored if you liked the video, left a comment, or shared it with someone curious. But only if you really like what I'm doing here. Now, turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's take one last gentle breath together tonight. Sleep well. You're home.